Oh, hi. uh, Hi. Second day in a row, I guess, that I'm streaming. Uh, yeah, this is a thing. Um, I know that I said last time, there's no real set schedule or anything of when I'll be doing these. I, it's gonna be a little all over the place. I'm not expecting anything super fleshed out. For the most part, right now, it's very much a case of as and when I sort of feel like hopping on, or feel like reading, or just vibing for a little bit. Um, so hence why I kind of here. I've changed a couple of things just so I can keep better track of the chat and stuff like that. Like I said last time, the chat does not show up on the screen itself, I think. I don't have a chat box thingy set up and sorted out. Maybe eventually I will, but for the time being, I'm simply leaving it there. Who knows? Maybe I'll put a different water gif in there. Or just some art. Who knows? We will see what I do with it. But we managed to get through chapter 1 yesterday. Uh, for anybody who's stopping by, we are reading The Last Unicorn. Um, like just kind of because I don't know. I don't know why I decided to start with this one, but it is the one that I chose, and it's the one that we're kind of doing currently. I don't know if I'll finish reading the whole book, or if we might swap to something else before I'm done or finished with it. It's still very up in the air. I'm not entirely sure. But for the time being, this is the book we're doing. Sorry if you hear the little birds a little bit louder. I'm trying to figure out a good medium for the background sound and stuff. There's high likelihood that the stream will go down a couple of times. I'm still in a very spotty area for connection and such. So it's a little bit hit or miss. It's not great for when you're reading and keeping the attention going, but we will we'll kind of figure it out. Hopefully, in the next day or two, I'll actually be able to go back to the better spot where the connection is solid. But for the time being, we are where we are, and that's okay. Yeah. Suppose we will get back to it. I've already forgotten the voices that I was making, so the voices are probably going to change every single stream for the characters and whatnot. I have a hard time remembering the kind of voices that I'm doing, the inflections and things like that. But we will see. We will work. We will work with what we have, and it'll be fine. It's all good. All right, let's get to it. Let's get some reading going. So, chapter 2. The 9 black wagons of the midnight carnival seemed smaller by daylight, and not menacing at all, but flimsy and fragile as dead leaves. Their draperies were gone, and they were now adorned with sad black banners cut from blankets and stubby black ribbons that twitched in the breeze. They were arranged strangely in a scrubby field, a pentacle of cages enclosing a triangle, and Mummy Fortuna's wagon lumping in the center. This cage alone retained its black veil, concealing whatever it contained. Mummy Fortuna was nowhere to be seen. The man named Rook was leading the straggling cloud of country folk slowly from one cage to the next, commenting somberly on the beasts within.
This one's the manticore. Man's head, lion's body, tail of a scorpion. Captured at midnight, eating werewolves to sweeten its breath. Creatures of night brought to light. Here's the dragon. Breathes fire now and then. Usually at people who poke it, little boy. Its inside is an inferno, but its skin is so cold it burns. The dragon speaks 17 languages badly and is subject to gout. The satyr. Ladies, keep back. Real troublemaker. Captured under curious circumstances, revealed to gentlemen only. For a token fee after the show. Creatures of night. Standing by the unicorn's cage, which was one of the inner three, the tall magician watched the procession proceeding around the pentacle. I shouldn't be here,
He said to the unicorn.
The old woman warned me to stay away from you.
He chuckled pleasantly.
She has mocked me from the day I joined her, and I have made her nervous all that time.
The unicorn hardly heard him. She turned and turned in her prison, her body shrinking from the touch of the iron bars around her. No creature of man's night loves cold iron, and while the unicorn could endure its presence, the murderous smell of it seemed to turn her bones to sand and her blood to rain. The bars of her cage must have had some sort of spell on them, for they never stopped whispering evilly to one another in clawed, pattering voices. The heavy lock giggled and whined like a mad monkey.
Tell me what you see,
said the magician, as Mommy Fortuna had said to him.
Look at your fellow legends and tell me what you see.
Rook's iron voice came clanging through the one afternoon.
Gatekeeper of the underworld, 3 heads and a healthy coat of vipers, as you can see. Last seen above ground in the time of Hercules, who dragged them up under one arm. But we lured him to light again with promises of a better life. Cerberus. Look at those 6 cheated red eyes. You may look into them again one day. This way, the Midgard serpent, this way.
The unicorn stared through the bars at the animal in the cage. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. It's only a dog, she whispered. It's a hungry, unhappy dog with only one head and hardly any coat at all. The poor thing. How could they ever take it for Cerberus? Are they all blind?
Look again,
the magician said. And the satyr, the unicorn continued. The satyr is an ape, an old ape with a twisted foot. The dragon is a crocodile much more likely to breathe fish than fire. And the great manticore is a lion, a perfectly good lion, but no more monstrous than the others. I don't understand.
It's got the whole world in its coils.
Rook, droning, and once more the magician said, Look again. Then, as though her eyes were getting used to darkness, the unicorn began to perceive a second figure in each cage. They loomed hugely over the captives of the midnight carnival, and yet they were joined to them. The stormy dream sprung from a grain of truth. So there was a manticore, famine-eyed, slobber-mouthed, roaring, curving his deathly tail over his back until the poison spine lolled and nodded just above his head. And there was a lion too, tiny and absurd by comparison. Yet they were the same creature. The unicorn stamped in wonder. It was so in all the other cages. The shadow dragon opened his mouth and hissed harmless fire to make the gapers gasp and cringe, while hell's snake furred watchdog howled triple dooms and devastations down on his betrayers. The satyr limped, leering to the bars and beckoning young girls to impossible delights right there in public. As for the crocodile, the ape, and the sad dog, they faded steadily before the marvelous phantoms until they were only shadows themselves. Even the unicorn's deceived eyes. This is a strange sorcery, she said softly. There's more meaning than magic to this. The magician laughed with pleasure and great relief.
Well said. Well said indeed. I knew the old horror wouldn't dazzle you with her two-penny spells.
His voice grew hard and secret.
She's made her third mistake now,
He said.
There's at least two too many for a tired old trickster like herself. The time draws near. The time draws near, Rook was telling the crowd as though he had overheard the magician. Ragnarok, on that day when the gods fall and the serpent of Midgard will spit a storm of venom at great Thor himself till he tumbles over like a poison fly. And so he waits for Judgment Day and dreams about the part he'll play. It may be so, I couldn't say. Creatures of night brought to light.
The cage was filled with snake. There was no head to it, and no tail. Nothing but a wave of tarnished darkness rolling from one end of the cage to the other, leaving no room for anything but its own thunderous breathing. Only the unicorn saw, coiled in the corner, a baleful boa, brooding, perhaps, over its own judgment on the midnight carnival. But it was tiny and dim as the ghost of a worm in the serpent's shadow. A wandering gawk stuck up his hand and demanded of Rook, "If this big snake do be coiled around the world, as you say, how come you be having a piece of it in your wagon? And if it can shatter the sea just by stretching itself, what's to keep it from crawling out, wearing your whole show like a necklace?" There were murmurs of agreement.
Some of the murmurs began to back warily away. I'm glad you asked me that, friend,
Rook said with a scowl.
It just so happens that the Midgard serpent exists in like any other space from ours, another dimension. Normally, therefore, he's invisible, but dragged into our world, as Thor hooked him once, he shows clear as lightning, which also visits us from somewhere else, where it might look quite different. And naturally, he might turn nasty if he knew that a bit of his tummy slack was on view daily and Sundays in Mummy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival. But he don't know. He's got other things to think about than what becomes of his belly button, and we take our chances, so do as do you all, on his continued tranquility.
He rolled and stretched the last word like dough, and his hearers laughed carefully. "Spells of seeing," the unicorn said. "She cannot make things."
"Nor truly change them,"
added the magician.
Shabby skills lies in the skies, and even that knack would be beyond her. If it weren't for the eagerness of those gulls, those marks, to believe whatever comes easiest. She can't turn cream into butter, but she can give a lion the semblance of a manticore to eyes that want to see a manticore there. Eyes that would take a real manticore for a lion, a dragon for a lizard, and the Midgard serpent for an earthquake, and the unicorn for a white mare.
The unicorn halted in her slow, desperate round of the cage, realizing for the first time that the magician understood her speech. He smiled, and she saw that his face was frighteningly young for a grown man, untraveled by time, unvisited by grief or wisdom. "I know you," he said. The bars whispered wickedly between them. Rook was leading the crowd to the inner cages now. The unicorn asked the tall man, "Who are you?"
I'm called Schmedrick the Magician, he answered. You won't have heard of me.
The unicorn came very near to understanding that it was hardly for her to have heard of one wizard or another, but something sad and valiant in his voice kept her from it. The magician said,
I entertain the sightseers as they gather from the show. Miniature magic, sleight of hand, flowers to flags, and flags to fish, all accompanied by persuasive patter and a suggestive that I would work more ominous wonders if I chose. It's not much of a job, but I've had worse. And I'll have better one day. This is not the end.
but the sound of his voice made the unicorn feel as though she were trapped forever. And once more she began pacing her cage, moving to keep her heart from bursting with the terror of being closed in. Rook was standing before a cage that contained nothing but a small brown spider weaving a modest web across the bars.
Arachne of Lydia, he told the crowd. Guaranteed the greatest weaver in the world. Her fate's the proof of it. She had the bad luck of defeating the goddess Athena in a weaving contest. Athena was a sore loser, and an Arachne is now a spider, creating only for Mother Fortuna's midnight carnival by special arrangement. Warp of snow and wool of flame, and never any two the same. Arachne.
Sprung on the loom of iron bars, the web was very simple and almost colorless, except for an occasional rainbow shiver when the spiders cuddled out on it to put a thread right. But it drew the onlooker's eyes and the unicorn's eyes as well, back and forth and steadily deeper, until they seemed to be looking down into the great rifts in the world. Black fissures that widened remorselessly, and yet would not fall into pieces as long as Arachne's web held the world together. The unicorn shook herself free with a sigh, and saw the real web again. It was very simple, almost colorless. It isn't like the others.
No, Schmedrick agreed begrudgingly, but there is no credit due to Mommy Fortuna for that. You see, the spider believes. She sees those cat cradles herself and thinks them her own work. Belief makes all the difference to magic like Mommy Fortuna's. Why, if that troop of wiltlings withdrew their wonder, there'd be nothing left of all her witchery but the sound of a spider weeping, and no one would hear it.
The unicorn did not want to look into the web again. She glanced at the cage closest to her own, and suddenly felt the breath in her body turn to a cold iron. There sat on the oaken perch a creature with the body of a great bronze bird and a hag's face, clenched and deadly as the talons with which she gripped the wood. She had the shaggy round ears of a bear, but down her scaly shoulders, mingling with the bright knives of her plumage, there fell hair the color of moonlight, thick and youthful around the hating human face. She glittered, but to look at her was to feel the light going out of the sky. Catching sight of the unicorn, she made a queer sound like a hiss and a chuckle together. The unicorn said quietly, "This one's real. This is the high-paced Leonel." Schmendrick's face had gone to color of oatmeal.
The old woman caught her by chance, he whispered, asleep as she took you. But it was an ill fortune, and they both know it. Mommy Fortuna's craft is just sure enough to hold the monster, but its mere presence is raying all her spells so thin that in a little time she won't have power enough left to fry an egg. She should never have done it. Never meddled with a real harpy, a real unicorn. The truth melts her magic, always, but she cannot keep from trying to make it serve her. But this time, Sister of the Rainbow, believe it or not, they hear Rook braying to the awed onlookers. Her name means the Dark One, the one whose wings blacken the sky before a storm. She and her two sweet sisters nearly starved the king Phineas to death by snatching and befouling his food before he could eat it. But the sons of the North Wind made them quit that. Didn't they, my beauty?
The harpy made no sound, and Rook grinned like the cage himself.
She put up a fiercer fight than all the others put together,
He went on.
It was like trying to bind all hell with a hair, but Mummy Fortuna's powers are great enough even for that. The creatures of night brought to light. Polly want a cracker?
Few in the crowd laughed. Harpy's talons tightened in her perch until the wood cried out.
You'll need to be freer when she frees herself,
The magician said.
She mustn't catch you caged.
I dare not touch the iron. The unicorn replied, My horn could open the lock, but I cannot reach it. I cannot get out. She kept trembling with horror of the harpy, but her voice was quite calm. Schmenric, the magician, drew himself up several times taller than the unicorn would have thought possible.
Fear nothing,
He began gently. For all my air of mystery, I have a feeling heart. But he was interrupted by the approach of Rook and his followers, grown quieter than the grubby gang who had giggled at the manticore.
The magician fled, calling back softly, Don't be afraid. Schmedrick is with you. Do nothing till you hear from me.
His voice drifted to the unicorn, so faint and lonely that she was not sure whether she actually heard it or only felt it brush against her. It was growing dark. The crowd stood in front of her cage, peering in at her with a strange shyness. Rook said,
The unicorn.
and stepped aside. She heard hearts bounce, tears brewing, and breath going backwards, but nobody said a word. By the sorrow and loss and sweetness in their faces, she knew that they recognized her, and she accepted their hunger as her homage. She had thought of the hunter's great grandmother and wondered what it must be like to grow old and to cry.
Most shows,
Said Rook after a time.
would end here. But what could they possibly present after a genuine unicorn? But Mummy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival holds one more mystery yet. A demon more destructive than the dragon, more monstrous than the manticore, more hideous than the harpy, and certainly more universal than the unicorn.
He waved his hand toward the last wagon, and the black hangings began to wriggle open, though there was no one pulling them.
Behold her! Root cried. Behold the last, the very end! Behold Ellie!
Inside the cage, it was darker than the evening, and the cold stirred behind the bars like a live thing. Something moved in the cold, and the unicorn saw Ellie, an old, bony, ragged woman who crouched in the cage, rocking and warming herself before a fire that was not there. She looked so frail that the weight of the darkness should have crushed her, and so helpless and alone that the watchers should have rushed forward in pity to free her. Instead, they began to back silently away for all the world as though Ellie was stalking them. But she was not even looking at them. She sat in the dark and creaked a song to herself in a voice that sounded like a saw going through a tree and like a tree getting ready to fall. What is plucked will grow again, what is slain lives on, what is stolen will remain, what is gone is gone.
She doesn't look like much, does she? Rick said. But no hero can stand before her, no god can wrestle her down, no magic can keep her out or in, for she's no prisoner of ours. Even while we exhibit her here, she is walking among you, touching and taking, for Eli is old age.
The coal of the cage reached out to the unicorn, and whenever it touched her, she grew lame and feeble. She felt herself withering, loosening, felt her beauty leaving her with her breath. Ugliness swung from her mane, dragged down her head, stripped her tail, gaunted her body, ate up her coat, and ravaged her mind with remembrance of what she had once been. Somewhere nearby, the harpy made her slow, eager sound, but the unicorn would gladly have huddled in the shadow of her bronze wings to hide from this last demon. Eli's song sawed away at her heart. What I see born dies on land, soft and trod upon. What is given burns the hand, what is gone is gone. The show is over. The crowd was stealing away, no one alone, but in couples and fews and severals, strangers holding strangers' hands, looking back often to see if Ellie were following. Root called plaintively,
Won't the gentleman wait to hear the story about the satyr?
and the sent and sent a sour yell of laughter chasing their slow flight.
Creatures of night, brought to light.
They struggled through the stiffening air past the unicorn's cage and on away, the rook's laughter yapping them home, and Ellie still singing. This is illusion, the unicorn told herself. This is illusion, and somehow raised a head heavy with death to stare deep into the dark of the last cage and see not old age, but Mommy Fortuna herself stretching and snickering and clambering to the ground with her old hairy ears. And the unicorn knew then that she had not become mortal and ugly at all, but she did not feel beautiful again. Perhaps that was illusion too, she thought wearily.
I enjoyed that, Mommy Fortuna said to Rook. I always do. I guess I'm just stage struck at heart. You better check on that damn harpy, Rook said. I could feel her working loose this time. It was like it was a rope holding her and she was untying me.
He shuddered and lowered his voice. Get rid of her, he said hoarsely.
Before she scatters us across the sky like bloody clouds, she thinks about it all the time. I can feel her thinking about it. Fool! Be still!
The witch's own voice was fierce with fear.
I can turn her into wind if she escapes, and into snow or into 7 notes of music, but I choose to keep her. No other witch in the world holds a harpy captive, and none other will. I would keep her if I could, do it only by feeding her a piece of your liver every day.
That's nice, Rook said. He settled away from her.
What if she only wanted your liver? He demanded. What would you do then?
Feed her yours anyway, Mommy Fortuna said.
She wouldn't know the difference. Harpies aren't bright.
Alone in the moonlight, the old woman glided from cage to cage, rattling, rattling locks and prodding her enchantments as a housewife squeezes melons in the market. When she came to the harpy's cage, the monster made a sound as shrill as a spear and spread the horrid glory of its wings. For a moment it seemed to the unicorn that the bars of the cage began to wriggle and run like rain. But Mummy Fortuna crackled her twiggy fingers, and the bars were iron again. And the harpy sank down on its perch, waiting. Not yet, the witch said. Not yet. They stared at each other with the same eyes. Mummy Fortuna said, You're mine. If you kill me, you're mine. The harpy did not move, but a cloud put out the moon. Not yet, Mummy Fortuna said, and she turned towards the unicorn's cage. Well, she said in her sweet, smoky voice, I had you frightened for a little while, didn't I? She laughed with a sound like snakes hurrying through mud and strolled closer. Whatever your friend the magician may say, she went on, I must have some small art after all, to trick a unicorn into believing herself old and foul. That takes a certain skill, I'd say. And it is 2 penny spell that holds the dark one prisoner, no other till I... The unicorn replied, Do not boast, old woman. Your death sits in that cage and hears you. Yes, Mommy Fortuna said calmly, but at least I know where it is, and you were out on the road hunting for your own death. She laughed again. And I know where that one is too, but I spared you the finding of it, and you should be grateful for that. Forgetting where she was, the unicorn pressed forward against the bars. They hurt her, but she did not draw back. The Red Bull, she said. Where can I find the Red Bull? Mama Fortuna stepped very close to the cage. The Red Bull of King Haggard, she muttered. So you know the bull. She showed two of her teeth. Well, he'll not have you, she said. You belong to me. The unicorn shook her head. You know better, she answered gently. Free the harpy while there is time, and set me free as well. Keep your poor shadows if you will, but let us go. The witch's stagnant eyes blazed up so savagely bright that the ragged company of Luna moths, off to a night's revel, fluttered straight into them and sizzled into snowy ashes. I'd quit show business first, she snarled, trudging through eternity, holding my homemade horrors. Do you think that was my dream when I was young and evil? Do you think that I chose this meager magic, sprung of stupidity because I never knew the true witchery? I play tricks with dogs and monkeys because I cannot touch the grass, but I know the difference. And now you ask me to give up the sight of you, the presence of your power. I told Rook I'd feed his liver to the harpy if I had to, and so I would. And to keep you, I'd take your friend Schmidrick and I'd. She ragged herself to gibberish, and at last a silence. Speaking of livers, the unicorn said, real magic can never be made by offering up someone else's liver. You must tear out your own and not expect to get it back. The true witches know that. A few grains of sand rustled down Mommy Fortuna's cheeks as she stared at the unicorn. All witches wept like that. She turned and walked swiftly towards the wagon, but suddenly turned again and grinned her rubbly grin. But I tricked you twice anyway, she said. Did you really think that those gogglers knew you for yourself without any help from me? No. I had to give you an aspect they could understand and a horn they could see. These days it takes a cheap carnival witch to make folk recognize a real unicorn. You'd do much better to stay with me and be false, for it is the whole world to see. Where am I? Hold up. I actually was. You'd do much better to stay with me and be false, for in this whole world only the Red Bull will know you when he sees you. She disappeared into her wagon, and the harpy let the moon come out again. Shoot, I've already gone through another chapter. I think that one just wasn't as long as the previous one. There's definitely going to be the longer ones, and then like the shorter ones. But anyway, I think I can probably get through this chapter today too. Yeah, okay, we'll see how many chapters we get through. You know, so we'll see how far we get. Chapter 3. Schmandrick came back a little before dawn, slipping between the cages as silently as water. Only the harpy made a sound as he went by. I couldn't get away any sooner, he told the unicorn. She set Rook to watching me, and he hardly ever sleeps. But I asked him a riddle, and it always takes him all night to solve riddles. This time, I'll tell him a joke and keep him busy for a week. The unicorn was gray, but still. There is magic on me, she said. Why did you not tell me? I thought you knew, the magician answered gently. After all, didn't you wonder how it could be that they recognized you? Then he smiled, which made him look a little older. No, of course not. You never would wonder about that. There was never been a spell on me before, the unicorn said. She shivered long and deep. There has never been a world in which I was not known. I know exactly how you feel, Schmendrick said eagerly. The unicorn looked at him out of dark, endless eyes, and he smiled nervously and looked at his hands. It's a rare man who is taken for what he truly is, he said. There's much misjudgment in the world. Now, I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend. Yet you take me for a clown or a clod or a betrayer, and so I be if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic, and will vanish as soon as you're free, but the enchantment of error that you put on me I must wear forever in your eyes. We're not always what we seem, and hardly ever what we dream. Still, I have read and heard it sung that unicorns. Oh, don't know what that was. And now I've lost where I am. Okay, I found it. Unicorns, when time was young, could tell the difference twixt the two, the false, shining, and the true, the lips, laughing, and the hearts through. His voice, his quiet voice lifted as the sky grew lighter for a moment, and for a moment the unicorn could not hear the bars whining or the soft ringing of the harpy's wings. I think you are my friend, she said. Will you help me? If not you, no one, the magician answered. You are my last chance. One by one, the sad beasts of the midnight carnival came whimpering, sneezing, and shuddering awake. One had been dreaming of rocks and bugs and tender leaves. Another bounding through high, hot grass. A third of mud and blood. And one had dreamed of a hand scratching the lonely place behind its ears. Only the harpy had not slept, and now she sat staring into the sun without blinking. Schmendrick said, If she frees herself first, we are lost. They heard Rick's voice nearby. That voice always sounded nearby, calling, Schmendrick, hey Schmendrick, I've got it, it's a coffee pot, right? The magician began to move slowly away. Tonight, he murmured to the unicorn, trust me till dawn, and was gone with a flap and a scramble, seeming as before to leave part of himself behind. Rook loped by the cage a moment later, all deadly economy. Hidden in her black wagon, Mommy Fortuna grumbled Ellie's song to herself. Here is there and high is low, all may be undone. What is true, two men know. What is gone is gone. Soon, a new catch of spectators began to come sauntering up to see the show. Rook called them in, crying, Creatures of night! Like an iron parrot, and Schmendrick stood on a box and did tricks. The unicorn watched them with a great interest and a growing uncertainty, not of his heart, but of his craft. He made an entire sow out of a sow's ear, turned a sermon into stone, a glass of water into a handful of water, 5 of spades into a 12 of spades, and a rabbit into a cold fish that drowned. Each time he conjured up confusion, and he glanced quickly to the unicorn with eyes that said, Oh, but you know what I really did. Once he changed a dead rose into a seed. The unicorn liked that, even though it did turn out to be a radish seed. The show began again. Once more, Rook led the crowd from one of Mommy Fortuna's poor fables to the other. The dragon blazed, Cerberus howled from hell to come and help him. The satyr tempted women until they wept. They squinted and pointed at the manticore's yellow tusks and swollen sting, grew still at the thought of the Midgard serpent, and wondered. Thank you so much for the follow, Mimi. my darling. Where was I? Swollen sting. They grew still at the thought of the Midgard serpent and wondered at Arachne's new web, which was like a fisherman's net with a dripping moon in it. Each of them took it for a real web, but only the spider believed that it held the real moon. This time, Rook did not tell the story of King Phineas and the Argonauts. Indeed, he hurried as sightseers past the harpy's cage as quickly as he could, gabbling only her name and the meaning of it. The harpy smiled. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished that she had chance to be looking somewhere else at the time. How are you doing? I miss you too. I hope you're doing well. When they stood in front of her cage, gazing silently in at her, the unicorn thought bitterly. Their eyes are so sad. How much sadder would they be, I wonder, if the spell that the skies may dissolved and they were left staring at a common white mare? The witch was right. Not one would know me. But then a soft voice, rather like the voice of Schmendrick the magician, said to her, "But their eyes are so sad." And when Rook shrieked, "Behold, the very end!" and the black hanging slithered back to revealed Ellie mumbling in the cold and darkness, the unicorn felt the same helpless fear of growing old that set the crowd to flight, even though she knew that it was only Mummy Fortuna in the cage. She thought, the witch knows more than she knows she knows. The night came quickly, perhaps because the harpy hurried it on and the sun sank through the dirty clouds like a stone into the sea. And with about as much chance of rising again, there was no moon or any stars. I'm good too, thank you. Mommy Fortuna made her gliding rounds of the cages. The harpy did not move when she drew near. That made the old woman stand and stare at her for a long while. "Not yet," she muttered at last. "Not yet." But her voice was weary and doubtful. She peered briefly at the unicorn, her eyes a stir of yellow in the grassy gloom. One day more," she said in a cackling sigh, and turned away again. There was no sound in the carnival after she was gone. All the beasts were asleep, save for the spider who wove and the harpy who waited. And yet the night creaked tighter and tighter until the unicorn expected it to split wide open, ripping a seam down the sky, and to reveal more bars, she thought. Where is the magician? At last he came hurriedly through the silence, spinning and dancing like a cat in the cold, stumbling over shadows. When he reached the unicorn's cage, he made a joyful bow to her and said proudly, "Schmedrick is with you." In the cage nearest to her, the unicorn heard the edged shivering of bronze. "I think we have very little time left," she said. "Can you truly set me free?" The tall man smiled. Even in his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. "I told you that the witch has made 3 great mistakes. Your capture was the last, and the taking of the harpy the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna can no more make you hers than she can make the winter a day longer. But to take me for a mountebank like herself, that was her first and fatal folly, for I too am real. I am Schmendrick the magician, the last of the red-hot swamis, and I am older than I look." "Where is the other?" the unicorn asked. Schmendrick was pushing back his sleeves. Don't worry about Rook. I asked him another riddle, one that has no answer. He may never move again." He spoke 3 angled words and snapped his fingers. The cage disappeared. The unicorn found herself standing in a grove of trees, orange and lemon, pear and pomegranate, almond and acacia, with soft spring underneath her feet and the sky growing over her. Her heart turned light as smoke, and she gathered up the strength of her body for a great bound into the sweet night. But she let the leap drift out of her, untaken, for she knew, although she could not see them, that the bars were still there. She was too old not to know.
I'm sorry, Schmidrick said, somewhere in the dark. I would have liked it to be that spell that freed you.
Now he sung somewhere cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion low.
This is a sure spell, he said. The bards are now as brittle as old trees, which I crumble and scatter so.
And then he gasped and snatched his hands away.
Each long finger was dripping blood. I must have gotten the accent wrong, he said hoarsely. He hid his hands in his cloak and tried to make his voice light. It comes and goes. A scratching of flinty phrases this time, and Schmedrick's bloody hands flickered across the sky. Something grey and grinning, something like a bear, but bigger than a bear, something that chuckled muddily, came limping from somewhere, eager to crack the cage like a nut and pick out bits of the unicorn's flesh with its claws. Schmedrick ordered it back into the night, but it wouldn't go. The unicorn backed into a corner and lowered her head, but the harpy stirred softly in her cage, ringing, and the grey shape turned what must have been its head and saw her. It made a foggy, globber sound of terror and was gone. The magician cursed and shivered and said, I called them up one other time long ago. I couldn't handle him then either. Now we owe our lives to the harpy, and she may yet come to call for them before the sun rises. He stood silent, twisting his wounded fingers, waiting for the unicorn to speak. I'll try once more, he said finally. Shall I try once more? The unicorn thought she could still see the night boiling where the grey thing had been. Yes, she said. Schmendrick took a deep breath, spat 3 times, and spoke words that sounded like bells ringing under the sea. He scattered a handful of powder over the spittle, smiled triumphantly as it puffed up in a single silent flush of green. When the light had faded, he said 3 more words. They were like the noise bees might make buzzing on the moon. The cage began to grow smaller. The unicorn could not see the bars moving, but each time Schmedrick said, no, she had less room in which to stand. Already she could not turn around. The bars were drawing in, pitiless as the tide or the morning, and they could shear through her until they surrounded her heart, which they would keep a prisoner forever. She had not cried out when the creature Schmendrick had summoned came, grinning toward her, but now she made a sound. It was small, despairing, but not yielding. Schmendrick stopped the bars, though she never knew how. If he spoke any magic, she had not heard it, but the cage stopped shrinking a breath before the bars touched her body. She could feel them all the same. Each one like the little cold wind, meowing with hunger, but they could not reach her. The magician's arms fell to his sides. I dare no more, he said heavily. The next time I might not be able. His voice trilled heavily. Got something getting in my way here. His voice trilled miserably away, and his eyes were as defeated as his hands. The witch made no mistake in me, he said. Try again, the unicorn said. You are my friend. Try again. Schmedrick smiled bitterly, was fumbling through his pocket in search of something that clicked and clinked. I knew it would come to this, he muttered. I dreamed it differently, but I knew. He brought out a ring from which dangled several rusty keys. You deserve the services of a great wizard, he said to the unicorn, but I'm afraid you'll be glad of the aid of a second-hand pickpocket. Unicorns know naught of need or shame or doubt or debt, but mortals, as you may have noticed, take what they can get, and Rook can only concentrate on one thing at a time.
The unicorn was suddenly aware of that every animal in the midnight carnival was awake, making no sound but watching her. In the next cage, the harpy began to stamp slowly from one foot to the other. Hurry, the unicorn said, hurry. Schmedrick was already fitting a key into a snickering lock. His first attempt, which failed, the lock felt silent. But when he tried another key, it cried out loudly, Ho ho! Some magician! Some magician! It had Mummy Fortuna's voice. It turned blue. The magician mumbled, but the unicorn could feel him blushing. He twisted the key, and the lock snapped open with one last grunt of contempt. Schmedrick swung the cage door wide and said softly,
Step down, lady. You are free.
The unicorn stepped lightly to the ground, and Schmedrick the magician drew back in sudden wonder.
Oh,
He whispered. It was different when there were bars between us. You looked smaller and not as... Oh, oh my. She was home in our forest, which was black and wet and ruined because she had been gone so long. Someone was calling to her from a long way off, but she was home, warming the trees and waking the grass. And then she heard Rook's voice, like a boat like a boat bottom gritting on pebbles.
Okay, Schmedrick, I give up. Why is a raven like a writing desk?
The unicorn moved away into deepest shadow, and Rook saw only the magician, the empty, dwindled cage.
His hand jumped to his pocket and came away again. Why, you thin thief! He said, grinning iron. She'll string you on a barbed wire to make a necklace for the harpy. He turned then and headed straight for Mummy Fortuna's wagon. Run, the magician said. He made a frantic, foolish, flying leap and landed on Rook's back, hugging the dark man dumb and blind with his long arms. They fell together, and Schmendrick scrambled up first, his knees nailing Rook's shoulders to the earth. Barbed wire, he gasped. You pile of stones, you waste your desolation. I'll stuff you with misery till it comes out of my eyes. I'll stop your heart into a green grass, and all your love into sheep. I'll turn you into a bad poet with dreams. I'll set all of your toenails growing inwards. You mess with me. Rook shook his head and sat up, hurling Schmedrick 10 feet away. What are you talking about? He chuckled. You can't turn cream into butter. The magician was getting to his feet, but Rook pushed him back down and sat on him. I never did like you, he said pleasantly. You give yourself airs, but you are not very strong. Heavy as night, his hands closed on the magician's throat. The unicorn did not see. She was out of the farthest cage, where the manticore growled and whimpered and lay flat. She touched the point of her horn to the lock and was gone to the dragon's cage without looking back. One after another, she set them all free. The satyr, Cerberus, the Midgard serpent, their enchantments vanished as they felt their freedom. They leapt and lumbered and slithered away into the night. Once more a lion, an ape, a snake, a crocodile, a joyous dog. None of them thanked the unicorn. She did not watch them go. Only the spider paid no mind when the unicorn called softly to her through the open door. Arachne was busy with a web which looked to her as though the Milky Way had begun to fall like snow. The unicorn whispered, Leave her. Freedom is better. Freedom is better. But the spider fled, unhearing, up and down her iron loom. She never sobbed for a moment, even when the unicorn cried, It's really very attractive, Arachne, but it's not art. The new web drifted down the bars like snow. Then the wind began. The spider web blew across the unicorn's eyes and disappeared. The harpy had begun to beat her wings, calling her power in, and as a crouching wave draws sand and water roaring down a beach, a bloodshot moon burst out of the clouds. The unicorn saw her, swollen gold, her streaming hair kindling, the cold, slow wings shaking the cage. The harpy was laughing. In the shadow of the unicorn's cage, Rook and Schmedrick were on their knees. The magician was clutching the heavy ring of keys, and Rook was rubbing his head and blinking. Their faces were blind with terror as they stared at the rising harpy, and they leaned together in the wind. It blew them against one another, and their bones rang. The unicorn began to walk towards the harpy's cage. Schmedrick the magician, tiny and pale, kept opening and closing his mouth at her, and she knew what he was shrieking, though she could not hear him. "She will kill you! She will kill you! Run, you fool! She's still a prisoner! She will kill you if you set her free!" But the unicorn walked on, following the light of her horn, till she stood before Seleno, the Dark One. For the instant, the icy wings hung silent in the air like clouds. The harpy's old yellow eyes sank into the unicorn's heart and drew her close. "I will kill you if you set me free," the eyes said. "Set me free." The unicorn lowered her head until her horn touched the lock of the harpy's cage. The door did not swing open, and the bars did not fall like starlight. The harpy lifted her wings, and four sides of the cage fell slowly away and down, like the petals of some great flower waking the night. One of the wreckage, and out of the wreckage the harpy bloomed, tremble and free, screaming, her hair swinging like a sword. The moon withered and fled. The unicorn heard herself cry out, not in terror but in wonder. "Oh, you are like me!" She reared joyously to meet the harpy's stoop, and her horn leapt up into the wicked wind. The harpy struck once, missed, and swung again, her wings clanging and her breath warm and stinking. She burned overhead, and the unicorn saw herself reflected on the harpy's bronze breast, and felt the monster shining from her own body. So they circled one another like a double star, and under the shrunken sky there was nothing real but the two of them. The harpy laughed with delight, her eyes turned the color of honey. The unicorn knew that she was going to strike again. The harpy folded her wings and fell like a star, not at the unicorn but beyond her, passing so close to that a single feather drew blood from the unicorn's shoulder, bright claws reaching for the heart of Mummy Fortuna, who was stretching out her own sharp hands as though to welcome the harpy home. "Not alone!" the witch howled triumphantly at both of them. "You never could have freed yourselves alone! I held you!" And then the harpy reached her, and she broke like a dead stick and fell. The harpy crouched on her body, hiding it from sight. The bronze wings turned red. The unicorn turned away. Close by, she heard a child's voice telling her that she must run. She must run. It was the magician. His eyes were huge and empty, and his face, always too young, was collapsing into childhood as the unicorn looked at him. "No," she said, "come with me." The harpy made a thick, happy sound that melted the magician's knees, but the unicorn said again, "Come with me." And together they walked away from the midnight carnival. The moon was gone, but the magician's eyes, the unicorn was the moon, cold and white, very old, lighting his way to safety or to madness. He followed her, never once looking back, even when he heard the desperate scrambling and skidding of heavy feet, the boom of bronze wings and Rook's interrupted scream. He ran, the unicorn said. "You must never run from anything immortal. It attracts their attention." Her voice was gentle, without pity. "Never run.
she said. Walk slowly. Pretend to be thinking of something else. Sing a song, say a poem, do your tricks, but walk slowly, and she may not follow. Walk very slowly, magician. So they fled across the night together, step by step, the tall man in black and the horned white beast. The magician crept close to the unicorn's light as he dared, and for beyond it moved hungry shadows, the shadows of the sounds that the harpy made as she destroyed the little there was to destroy of the midnight carnival. But another sound followed them long after those had fallen, followed them into morning, into a strange road, the tiny drowsy sounds of a spider weeping. I managed to get through 2 chapters today. I'm kind of proud of that, honestly. As somebody who's not really read books dedicatedly in a hot minute, it's been a little while. I I'm likely going to be keeping these streams to roughly about like an hour long and things like that. Just long enough that, we can read a little bit, we can chat a little bit, and and then go on with our lives, if you will. Just something small, just a little peace, a little moment of quiet, and just vibing. Um, yeah, just something nice, something a little different. But I appreciate those of you that stopped by and just, sat with me and listened and chatted for a little bit. I do appreciate. Um, don't worry about the uh, ad break. We will likely end before that even hits. But yeah, I hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day or night, whatever time it may be for you. I know for majority it is still very much daytime and it's quite late out. So I hope that you have a wonderful day. Go out, have some fun, do some things, enjoy what the day brings. But for the time being, farewell, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.